Okay.
Yeah, we're good?
Yep.
Okay. Welcome everyone to New York Writers Workshop West of the Hudson Reading Series. Thank you all so much for coming out here. It's been a while since New York Writers Workshop has hosted a reading, and we feel it's so brand new to us. Getting butterflies just even thinking about doing it, and so glad that you're all here to help us through the new hump. New York Writers.
And thank you to you for inviting us.
Oh, you're
Thank
welcome.
you.
It's our pleasure.
So I'm Tim Tomlinson, the director of the organization. New York Writers Workshop is a not-for-profit literary organization that had been based primarily in Manhattan, and now I think I guess we've gone global across the river. We're international and now local. This is our 25th year. We actually began the week of 9/11. That's when we ran our first workshops. And looking back from where we are now, it seems like those were the good old days. Our reading series began in Lower Manhattan, in the Red Room above KGB Bar. And we were there for quite a few years. Then COVID struck and everything went on hiatus. We moved down to Brooklyn, and for a few years we were running really wonderful readings in the Underland Gallery in Bay Ridge. And here we are across the river, not far from the home of our state team, the New York Giants. So we're calling it the West of the Hudson series. For now, if we come up with a better name, or if you do, let us know. But we're not really that far west. If you turn and look, you can see through the fog and the trees some of the lights of Manhattan. We're still very close, very connected. We're so happy to be here. In this location, we actually know some of our neighbors. Some of them are here. Welcome, neighbors. I want to just say hello to a couple of very special guests. One is my brother Michael. Michael is the chief benefactor of New York Writers Workshop. Without his generous donations, I might have to get a real job. Don't tell him. And you know, I've actually had meetings with the New York Writers Workshop board. People are talking about when we construct our own university that we should name a building for Michael. Some people suggested the gym. I said I didn't think that was appropriate since he's never benched over 115. We're thinking of the Michael Tomlinson snap bar. And the other special guests are this home's previous owners. Yeah. Barney and Marcia Eskin have graced us with their appearance tonight, right over here. Given where we've lived, where we've come from, I just don't think they can imagine what a mitzvah you've done for us. Every day we're so enormously thankful for being here and that you enabled us to set this up. Thank you so much for that and for coming. And Michael, thank you for all your generosity and for being here.
Thank you for including us, and the house has never looked better.
I have. She said off screen.
So we have three wonderful poets with us tonight. We have Joanna Sofrian, Indran Nirta Nayagam, and Mega Sud. Each one slays me for one reason or another. You have their blurbs everywhere around the room, so you can see the lists, the abridged list of their many accomplishments. Each has a relatively recent publication. The books are here for sale, so when we finish the reading, please come on up and have a word with them and maybe purchase a book. Joanna's Temporary Beast was from, I think, late last year.
Correct.
Yeah. And Mega's Language of the Wound of Love, that just came out. Yay. Yeah. And Indran always has a recent book. It's not in the U.S., it's in Cuba, Panama, Portugal, Sri Lanka. I'll let him tell you which one is the most recent. We're going to have Joanna read first, followed by Indron, and then Mega. But it's sort of a launch for everyone. They'll just come up immediately after each one reads, so I'm not going to come back up here and do a new introduction since you have their material in front of you, but I do want to say just a couple of things. There are only, in my own work, in my own poetry, there are only 2 poets I've ever mentioned by name in my poems, and one is Joanna. Full name. And that's because there's a way that Joanna gets in my head, especially before coffee. I like to read your work before I've had breakfast, and then I'm just in another zone. And I would call it a kind of contemplative spirituality that you induce. So I'm very thankful to have you here. Indron's work reminds me of what it means to be a citizen in the world, a participant in its struggles and a witness to its outrages. And Mega's work returns me to myself, my body, and what it means to inhabit a body in these times. I think each of them are wonderful. We're honored to have them here with us for our first reading in New Jersey. And without further ado, I'd like to bring up Joanna Sulfrian.
Hi everyone, thank you. I said to Michael, whom I just met tonight, that I'm more nervous the nicer the group of people is. So I'm very nervous. I'm going to read a couple from each of the books I have out. Just because it's a hard time, and I guess, do you have this feeling that you don't want your identity to be how you feel about things now? So, here we go. Sometimes a gray mood comes. Sometimes a gray mood comes. An elected valley in the heart, a flock of clouds. It is then that the woman walks very far to find warm weather. A simple horizon with a sea, a boat, and a shore that is long. There is a man waiting with flowers at the bedside. Sometimes she returns. Sometimes he must go find her. The sea, the boat, the shore, these things know where she is, as does the presence of death in every lily, which is not the whole of the lily, but something of it. I wrote that for my mama. So, see, I always change my mind when I plan the whole thing. So we'll change. And then we'll write something else. You among stones. I haven't seen the sea in a year, the place where we scattered you, and where perhaps you still rest among stones, the waves still brushing what once was hair. There the waves settle into their own quiet, the way unquiet things do, when they have repeated themselves so many times they have become lost. Perhaps you are taking long breaths, now that you are more air than skin. Not even the gulls can spy where you are, a cloud no larger than a fingernail. You probably have no capacity for longing, and therefore don't miss me. For this, I try to be proud of you. But I miss the sea and those things quiet that settle as night settles when there is no moon, calmly, darkly, certain of its color.
Joanna,
Yes.
sorry, would it be possible for me to move this closer to him?
Okay.
It's I'm sorry.
No worries.
It's better
We'll adjust.
height. Yeah, sorry. Oh, Say hello, everyone, as the camera is passing through. Sorry.
Well, this I'm going to read a poem about my thigh, so this close up.
Sorry, maybe here. Because I couldn't get the thing to like close up, yeah.
That looks good though, that's close up.
Yeah, that's okay. Yeah, I think that's good.
Okay.
Okay. Oh.
Tighten it up.
Uh-oh.
No,
Why
it'll
is
be
it,
okay.
why
Just
is it,
let it rest.
but it's
Okay,
now
that's
too
good.
low. It's too
Raise the
low.
notch.
Guys, help me out here. I don't know what I'm doing.
Let's see.
Yeah, there.
A notch. This one's as far as it could go. Let's see, this one right there.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Yeah.
So I do write a lot of odes. I like staring at objects, and I like imagining the inner lives they have. And this one, I was thinking about what would happen if my thigh detached. Ode to my thigh. Thigh, you have betrayed me. With a long white flash, you have evaporated into the sheets. I cannot find you, nor can my lover, who's mussing the bed in a panic. We've been searching over an hour for your regal length by which we measure ourselves. If we don't find you, how can we be sure we ever existed? Already, we're mythologizing you as white as swan feathers, as soft as a cherub. The other thigh is getting bored. It wants to go outside for a cigarette, and who can blame it? Innocuous is the night air, perfect for wallowing in one's inadequacies. The stippled flesh, the spider veins, the stray bruise, that goddamn cabinet corner. It would rather not lie on the bed, covering the crossword like a prosthesis. I am left only to my brain and to my arms, heavily muscled, gustily overturning pillows. Come back, oh hairless wonder. Who else will thrill my lover's palm? Who else will flash through a velvet slit? To think is to be full of sorrow. We miss your sensual lightnings. Thigh of thighs, come back. You'll need a dull field to illuminate you. Take me, take these wan sheets, the sullen thigh. Each night we'll tuck you in, kiss your buttery skin, and in our dreams we'll deserve you. This is a chapbook. I write a poem a day every single February with a group of people. And I've been doing this for like 12 years, and one February I decided to write everything in couplets, kind of like puzzles, but not quite, but disconnected couplets. And it kind of functions as a journal. So this is the poem from that particular February 3rd, and it is called The Second Perfect Number, which only my friend who was a math major understood. A mighty fortress. Last night we lit our eyes and our lips became moons from the gaze. The wine bottle envied how you decanted into me. Sundays too, I used to be at church, an amateur lover hunting God in the wine that trembled in the thimble glasses. The cat is curled at my hip. His griefs do not measure the same as mine, and our relationship is somewhat formal. Some thoughts electrocute like sleep to the insomniac. Buried in these words are instructions for weeping. If I die early, you insist you won't remarry. Do, as it is, the newspapers tell of too much sorrow. And this one I wrote when I thought there was only going to be one administration. And you know who. It has a very bad swear word in it, so if you have your pearls, get ready to clash. Trump-era commute. This was the February 7th poem of that year. Trump-era commute. The construction worker steps aside on the sidewalk. Maybe Eastern European. Excuse me, lady. Good morning, lady. Last night in the subway, a loon, unhinged, unmedicated. Look at you, man. Fuck you. You're ugly. Oh, man, I'm sorry. Fuck you. Today, in the face across from me, an aspect of the dead writer. As he reads his book, I gape at the bend in his eyebrows. The MTA tape loops. Hello, it's dangerous to hold the doors open. Hello, it's dangerous to hold the doors open. Hello, it's dangerous. If you've retained any degree of hope, you must be hallucinating. The apples in the garden are not apples, but visions of apples. Waking from a dream, February 26th. When I place my feet on the floor, all sense of you condenses into a pebble, which I spend the rest of my day looking for. There is another kind of waiting which happens in the room deep inside your being, the one with dust on its chair. The sea gave up its idea of mirrors long ago, and we are supposed to know something of the stars, their corridors. This is all very melancholy because I am melancholy. Because I am melancholy, that is what I think of this. When death endeavors to doom, I run topless through a cornfield. The cob stares me down with many eyes, and I laugh. I was at a reading a few months ago with some very famous people, and the audience clapped after her first poem, and she said, "I don't read for clappers." I won't say who it was, but thanks. I'm happier. Okay. That last poem mentioned looking at the gape of the bend in a man's eyebrows, and it was reminding me of Spalding Gray, that guy on the subway. And I always read something I've never read before. At every reading, I always read something I've never read before. I've never read this one before. It's a prose poem, and it's about Spalding Gray.
Oh.
Do we have any fans here?
Yeah.
Yeah. I did meet him once. He did a show at my alma mater.
Wow.
He was lovely. And do we remember how he died? He jumped off the Staten. Okay. So waiting for the bus, Columbia Street, Brooklyn, the day after the writer jumped off the Staten Island ferry for Spalding Gray. I've left the dishes submerged in the sink, and the feeling is mutual. All this hovering and bits still cling. A shopkeeper nods to me in English. The brown glass of the bus stop smushes the light. Where's the bus? Oh, hello, sparrow. Harangue that rind of bread. Now hop away, little casket of feathers. No bus. A subterranean rumble wiggles my legs like the fat machine at that carnival. Where was that? There's a boom crane. The container yards go on, containing things. Joy, looking for joy. The sky is quite cold and unabashedly bright. There's my foot, a cloud stuck in a puddle. Decades of milk spills and soot, and then water. There's water. If you separate the particles, you can smell it. Regular, brackish, salt. It's all ocean eventually. No bus. The explanation? He's not crying, not drowning. He's simply letting the salt in his ducts become coextensive with the salt in the channel. The bus. Aluminum tube, maybe 8 blocks down, bellowing like a top-heavy Baptist. The sun bounces off its eyes. Now 6-ish blocks. The shopkeeper hangs a sign in his window. 3 blocks. There was something about a depression with claws. Yes, a car crash and a dented skull. 2 blocks. Where's my Metro card? Notebooks, tissues. 1 block. Then the door spit-size open, and there it is, shame. He'd said, "Thank you for helping with the show. Come out with my friends, we really owe you a drink." And I begged off. Exams tomorrow. Truth? I was a lake-eyed co-ed with a dead mom and no ID. Under the mouth of the sky, the sparrow, again with a sparrow, and then boom, in my head, it's death. The sparrow's, I mean, not yours. Its death will be dry, competent, while yours, we're driving by your water now. It is vast and gray and mute. Someone saw you on the ferry, you know. We're driving by your water. People are looking for you. Someone saw you on the ferry. Your wife was on the radio. We are driving by the water which you are under right now. The rest of us only plunge our arms, and this is supposed to mean we are saved? And then this came out last year, Indrin and Sarah Cahill Marin's Press, Beltway Editions, were kind enough to publish it. Changing my mind again. No. Okay. Grown up. You scooped up handfuls of your mother one Easter Sunday. You stood on a cold beach and tossed. The wind blew her back onto your body, into the seams of your shoes, igniting, you did not know at the time, a decade-long crisis regarding what to do with them. Thinking she was food, the gulls came. 1.9 decades later, you find yourself scooping up handfuls of your father on a chartered lobster boat. The sun presides over all, blankly, blessings and whatnot coming out of its mouth. Scattering is illegal, so the captain maneuvers out of sight from land behind the lighthouse and cuts the engine. Take that, shithead gulls. Your children are delighted by the allowable littering of roses. Your father is cold. There's a bit of bone. A friend had sent a note. That night at your reading, I felt your mother's presence, and she clearly told me to tell you she's proud. You'd had a glass of wine afterward. I know that sounds weird. Love for them has made your heart permanent. It dashes itself against the cliffs, gray and vertically veined with mica. The earth is stuck in a tectonic shrug. These things happen. You don't begrudge the captain who needs to cover his ass. He shows the children a lobster, explains how the feathers on the underside indicate that it's female. Lobsters can swim up to 30 miles an hour, which is fast. But you would like to point out, not as fast as the suits who zip up the dead. Later, you return home to the city and watch the glue fall off the stars. There's a man on the subway whose face you want to touch. I thought to wear a watch so I could track myself, but then I forgot to look at what time I started.
You're good.
Okay, I'll do one more. I do translate a lot of Federico Garcia Lorca, which sounds more impressive than it is in that I have very basic Spanish. But what I find when I translate him is that I'll go off in another direction that really has nothing to do or very little to do with his work. But he's enough there that I need to acknowledge him, so I call them Rorschach Lorcas. And there's a bunch in this book, and this is a Rorschach Lorca called Night Sky. When your eye reaches the farthest night sky, the part that domes, kisses itself with stars and crystals, declare, this is mine and not mine. Sure, there are songs and children and eggs. There are blackbirds and beer and fountains. You stand with the flowers that live in the world before turning squalid in jars. Dull the day's roster, and another one tomorrow. But now, death is flung across the sky, and you are beneath, alive. Fill your lungs with cartwheeling spirits, conduct the bats, what use for words? Eventually, you will tire. Take the sky to bed with you, darling. We forget it reaches the ground and already lives in your hair.
Thank you, Jen. Thank you. Thank you, Tim, and Stephen, thank you for the arthritis workshop. Thank you, Joanne. Thank you. I always wear a hat because, you know, in the country without a hat is where you go to the other place, so I try to avoid that. Keeping the hat on. That's in Haiti. And I'm going to take the hat off, but I'm going to keep it close, so you'll see that it's here nearby. I'm going to begin with a poem from my new book, latest book, Seer, for my mother, who passed away on January 25th of 2024. And this one's called Mother in Tongues, and then I'm going to read another one from this book, which was written during the first administration of that murderer. But it's not. So it's a funny thing because it's. You think, well, have the poems dated or something? But sadly, they have not. Though the book is actually almost out of print, so which is an indication, right? There were 10,000 steps against the tyrant, but it didn't quite work. Anyway, Mother in Tongues. Mother has gone back to the kitchen, where she needs 2 pounds of cardamom, a cup of cloves. She will make love cake again. This is Christmas in January, and she's visiting her daughter in California. Where are you, Mummy? In Templeton. Who am I? Indran. On Tuesday evening, her body burning, she began to speak in tongues to invoke the Holy Spirit. Taklata, 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 taklata. We called 911. Ambulance and paramedics came along with 2 fire trucks. I have become expert in friendships between these groups of first responders in America, where more elements give security jack-up costs. In America, where we move to live, then die. America, taklata, taklata, taitata, taitata. Late night olive oil. I mean, all of my work in the last years have been in and around the pandemic, right? And before the pandemic, during the pandemic. So this was something that happened during the pandemic. Late night olive oil. I was at home with my mother and a caregiver, Marianne, who stayed with us during the pandemic, slept at home. So the 3 of us were sort of a little family for a few years. Late night olive oil. Let us put the letters and fears and boiling emotions on the page, Mummy. Why did you go to the kitchen stealthily, without a word to your sleeping son, without your walker, to find the large bottle of olive oil, to pour it on the table and floor, to fill a small vessel which you meant to carry back to your room, as if nobody would notice until you called my name, because you could not negotiate the rest of the way from dining table to bedroom, vessel in hand, without cane or walker. I write to atone for my flailing words, saying never, never, never again. The kitchen is prohibited. Your mania for oil in the hair is prohibited. The stealthy, mischievous, childish, truant foray into the darkness with a torch in hand, which you forgot on the countertop, all of this is prohibited.
Your losing memory and control are prohibited. These words are prohibited. Decline and death are prohibited. She was very, I was very happy because she would sit in the living room and we organize readings at home, just like here in your home. And for many years, the few years before the pandemic, and then recently organized another reading there. So it's, she always said she didn't know I understood poetry, but she supported this poet's work in a way that I'm very grateful for. You know, the word amma is Tamil for mummy, and appa. So those are two words that are sort of universal, really. This poem is called Amma. Amma, no need for more. You opened my heart, scooped out my soul with that word. Appa too, in memory, the love and pride I felt in his embrace. I grew up certainly with Daddy and Mummy and used those terms still, but in these middle years I realized the call of the native tongue, the ID card that does not expire, words heard from the womb along with the English my parents loved. The Tamil tutor, a dour knuckle crusher, visited our afternoons, but MJR gave us romantic Tamil in the cinema. And becoming a young man, I discovered the poet of the red earth and pouring rain, and what the young woman whispered to her friend by the well on the high road. Thank you. You know, Ramanujan, A.K. Ramanujan wrote a magnificent book called The Interior Landscape that changed my life when I first read it. It was published in 1960, and really was a groundbreaker, a translation, transcreation from a medieval Tamil epic, Tamil anthology of poems. And one of the images of the poet is the poet of the red earth and pouring rain. The red earth of Tamil Nadu and the pouring rain of the monsoon. Along with Sia last year, this new book came out, The Runner's Almanac. And I'll just read a few from here as well. The runner runs in my blood, in my mind and heart, feeds from light and water, wind and fire, recites recipes for food I prepare, dreams I inhabit, books I choose to bring to term. The runner is a sign in the sky, a voice inside the skin, a phrase in a poem. The runner carries 2 X chromosomes to my X and Y, but is not opposed, shares the enterprise. I listen to her advice of when to plant, how to find balance and leap ahead, how to create perennials to assure the food supply while experimenting with new lines. The would-be poet, would-be farmer, poet, Strider. Keenness of feeling, desire to speak, overwhelming, as I search for the right form to express overflowing need, to banish sleep, wake up running, dancing to Graceland, Aqualung, Lola, Yellow Submarine, and to you on the trail, sauntering in my sleep, then trilling in morning, bird song, sporting rabbit ears, keen for the almost silent step of the photographer before dashing off into the bush, fawning deer, surprised by the spring, drinking, woodpecker, even stopping its relentless eating just for a minute as you run by, as you run this poem into a state of atonement, of salvation, of bliss, at the miracle of life popping out from the dark, tangled interstices of melancholy where my heart had foundered until you whistled by, striding. Thank you. God walking. You think God does not exist, or if he does, that he has gone missing. I tell you, you are wrong. I tell you, God is walking towards me now. This morning I saw him wearing white, my son arriving at National Airport, my mother dressed to the nines in green batik blouse, green pantsuit, walking out of the house with a cane. No more Walker, not today. And my son said she looked good. She's on the mend. Imagine that after finding her just 2 weeks back, slouched on a chair, hot water lashing her from the shower, and her helper thought she had died. We used smelling salts and we dragged her out of that sleep. We're not sleeping now. Soon we will let the cane go flying. Soon we will say to the woman running out to the city along Rock Creek Trail and on the path in front of our house, good afternoon, welcome home. Let me thank you, Joanna, for reading new work. I want to share a new work, two new poems. One in Spanish. I have a new book. This is really the newest book. I got it this week. It's called El Bosque de Deleites Fratricidas, which is like the wood of the fratricidal delights. It's sort of a rather dark title. It sort of fits our times. So if anyone would like to, what I'm going to read is a poem in Spanish. That's a new poem called No Rendirse. So don't surrender, and it's for our times. No puedo ir para atrás o al costado. Mi espíritu está programado a seguir adelante a pesar de su miedo y la incertidumbre que genera nuestro tiempo en la tierra. A pesar de los golpes inesperados del destino, un asesinato, miles de asesinatos, un avionazo, un derrumbe, una inundación, a pesar de lo que dice el loco a cargo de mi gobierno o los psicofantes que ha empleado para administrarlo. Este último no es noticia, pero sí el hecho que no me rindo, no dejo mi sueño en manos ajenas. Así que jódete, señor presidente, con tus despidos, tus pláticas para ceder el territorio libre a cambio de unos lingotes de oro. Jódete 2 veces, jódete 3 veces. Nadie va a morir en vano durante la resistencia a favor de la verdad nuestra que abarca a toda la gente común y corriente que tiene que trabajar para dar refugio a sus seres queridos. So jódete is, that word that Joanna used so well in her poem, and I'm still having been tried. Fuck. 2 times, 3 times. Señor Presidente, you can figure that out. Anyway, so that's a new poem. Not to surrender. Whatever happens, don't surrender. Don't give up.
Yep.
Yeah.
Resist. In your own way, in every way. They're picking up Germans, they're picking up English people, they're picking up, and of course they're planning 43 countries that they want to ban from the United States. So all those families will not be able to meet each other. So there's a lot of fighting to come. I mean, legal fighting to stop this. And I'll read one more new poem in English. The latest poem is called Driving Back. And the epigraph is in French. Je te demande la route, et tu me réponds, je te donne la moitié. I ask for the road, and you reply, I'll give you half of it. Okay? Which is a saying in Côte d'Ivoire, where I lived in 96 to 98. Drive on, friend. You have the road, but only half of it. I want you to return. That was 25 years ago. Imagine, so many lives, poems, children, friendships. I gave you that road, but only half, and still, and still, and still you have not come back. Was my wish a fiction, a tall tale, a wish in a bottle? Why do you carry all the talismans still, Balafon, royal wicker chair, stick figures from man? Why do you carry the memory of that dance at the end of that last café littéraire, whirl in a club, high life? Where are the cocks and hens, the mongoose, the snake? Where is your friend? Gone to the village, gone to stay. Where can you find him now, away from microphones, computer, book? Where are you now, in mind and heart? Are you still a boy from the island in the water at Grand Bassam? Are you drinking wine, eating a chiquet and poisson braisé? Are you still a poet, maker of myths, of paradise found? Thank you. So the paradise lost, paradise found. I mean, there's nothing new in poetry. People the same things. Milton did. So I'll read now maybe 3 more poems. I'm not sure how much time I have. From Seer, I spent some time in Trinidad in the early part when it was not quite the pandemic. We didn't know what it was. I had tickets. I was in the airport in Miami flying to Port of Spain. And so I carried on, I went on that trip. I was coughing in the airport. I had no idea what was going on, but I took the flight. And then in Trinidad, I spent a week. And on the way back, people were putting on coats at the airport, and they were getting, you know, the pandemic was just sort of beginning. Anyway, in that time in Trinidad, I wrote a couple of poems. One is called Sharing Roti. Roti, you know roti?
Yeah.
Motilal speaks pidgin real good, with a deep, hoarse throat. Can't catch every word. I have to train my ear, but his broad smile and the roti he brings for the party, his slight bulge, the charmed love he shares with his wife, Savriti, make up for my clueless smile. Love doesn't need to be understood word by word. Just smile and scoop the chicken curry with the roti. And don't worry about the belly. That's a party rule. Another is planned to speak real slow on the telephone.
What is roti? Roti is
Roti is a kind of pancake with or a chapati, if you've had a chapati.
and chickpeas. Okay, got it. Yeah.
And in Trinidad, you eat something called doubles, which is I believe, a roti with a chana inside, and chickpeas and spices. Lovely.
What's the one in
good
Mexico that's similar?
Quesadilla, maybe? Oh, no.
Yeah,
I think
almost,
so.
yeah, something like that.
I have a dear friend, Mervyn Taylor. We published him at Beltway as well. His book, Getting There. Anyway, he's been explaining poems with him for so many years. He said something, and I wrote this little poem called Teacher for Merv. Oh boy, you will write 30 poems from this trip. I know you. I hear your mind formulating questions, saying you've not written is a ruse, a cover. Yes, you caught a bug, and you've had to sweat it out. Bones unstiffen, headache calm down, but your force is keen. You'll come back strong. There is no other road for you. You are a beat in love with beats. Now ask me that again, boy. I'm ready to feed. You know, there is no other road for you. I mean, you think about Cavafy, right? The road to Ithaca, you know, or you think about Frost, the road not taken. We're all on a road. We're all traveling, moving. The migrant state is my, you know. Maybe I don't know if I should read one more poem, 2 more.
Please. Sure.
I'll finish with this from this book, because the migrant states is a sort of play on words. It's the United States. It's my book about this country, and it's also the migrant stating or speaking. And it came out in 2020 in the pandemic, so it was. I mean, it's around. Hanging was published it. And one of the poems in the book had to do with, well, you'll know the theme when I read it. The migrant's reply. We have been running for so long. We're tired. We want to rest. We don't want to wake up tomorrow and pack our bags. We have gone 10,000 miles. We have boarded a rowboat, tugboat, bus, freight train. We have a cell phone and some bread. Our eyes are dry. Our breath needs washing. What next? You're putting up a wall on your southern flank? What an irony. The country that accepts refugees does not want us. We qualify. We have scars, and our host governments hunted us, at least some of us. The rest fled in fear. Gangs do not spare even the children. White vans took away our uncles, our cousins. Do you think they've been made into plowshares? Aye, what are you saying? Too easy to wear our hearts in these words, in slings, on our faces, furrowed, perplexed. What happened to kindness to strangers? Why do we have to be herded like prisoners held in a holding camp? We are human beings, and like you in safer countries, we have the same obligation to save ourselves and our children. Oh, the children, look at them. Give them food and school and a new set of clothes. Give them a chance. Whether you are red or blue, the eye of the hurricane does not discriminate. We are your tumbling weeds, hurling cars, flooding banks, and we are diggers of the dikes. We can teach you so many languages and visions. You would learn so much. You would never, ever say, lock us up. Thank you.
Just want to make sure.
Okay. Anyway, first of all, I'd like to thank Tim and Deedle for opening their hearts and homes for all of us. And thank you everyone for coming to the freedom. It's an honor to share the space with Indran and John. I'm meeting her for the first time. I bet it's not going to be the last time. And yeah. So without taking any more time, I'm going to start reading from my book, My Body Lives Like a Thread. And it was published by FlowerSong Press in 2022. And I just give you one line about it. It's like how the body, the thread to the body, it never remains at an individual level, and it like it molds and morphs into the social birthing problems, all sorts of problems. It arises from the body as an identity. How the body of a woman is seen as a thread, the body of a migrant worker, the body of a refugee, body of a person of color. So that's the theme of this book. I'll read just 2 poems from this book. The first one is called Peace, a Metaphor for Denial, and I wrote this in 2020 when during the George Floyd protests and Black Lives Matters and all, and to this day the poem seems to be relevant. Peace, a metaphor for denial. Peace, an act of ignorance, an act of denial, is not bliss, no more. When silence is gutted like a fish and the blood of your own fills the street, how long can you be the puppet in your own peaceful country? This act of abandonment speaks a muted language for all the hearts trapped like sparrows on the other side of town. The wall creates a boundary between me and humanity. They are still considered illegal with one foot in my land, another bloodied and stuck in the barbed wire that I put around God's own country. I was born with the privilege to call the piece of earth my own. No matter it is laced and seeped with someone else's blood, it belongs to me now. The young boy is shot, the pavement is stained by the blood, by the color of his blood, dark and useless to the people of this peaceful country. Those who pull out the armrest and the beach chairs to see the stars light up the sky and the deafening noise muting the wails of a widowed mother. They sip the beer as cold as their souls, leaving the scene with a shrug and a short sigh. Ignorance is bliss. Peace is a metaphor for denial. In this country I call mine. The next is called My Body Is Not an Apology. And this was the title poem of my chapbook by the same name. It came the same year as this book. My body is not an apology. This body, my body, is not an apology. It's a prayer. Forgiveness wrapped in the filigree end of my skin, frayed at the ends, battered for so long by your pointy convictions and cookie-cutter rules that tried to shape and mold this body along. My body is not an apology. It doesn't desire to fit in a frame mapped inch by inch, else to be ashamed. My body is not an apology. It's a roar, a declaration, an unapologetic, unabashed, straight-in-your-face truth. A war cry, a deafening scream from the silence. My body is not an apology. This body will not be mapped as a benchmark for beauty and attempt to hide the crow's feet or the spider veins from your wild eyes and your forked tongue. My body is not an apology, but a safe haven, an epitome of affection, a metaphor for crimson love that flows in my veins for years to come. My body is not an apology. It's an eye of a storm, a dance of destruction, a safe haven for life, forgiveness in disguise. With love, neatly folded in the wrinkles of my skin, warmth oozing from every pore of my being, a lesson etched in every single crow's feet, forgiveness written through every inch of me. This body, my body, it's not an apology, but in the end, it is a profound lesson, a triumphant proclamation, an unfettered declaration. Thank you. So this is my new book. Yay! It got published on March 10th, and the copies arrived like today, half an hour before I left.
Wow.
So yeah, thank you so much. It's called Language of the Wound is Love, and maybe I'll talk about it more in the QA section. And I have my reading thing ready because this just came, I couldn't mark the poems. So the opening poem of this book is called Poem and Its Hunger. And I think as a poet and a writer, everyone can relate to it. Poem and its hunger. Do you ever realize how the body reclaims itself, like the dried scar from its time of birth? You only realize its presence when you see it. Hunger reeks from your soul, and like water from a mother's hair wrung after a bath, it brings out scented memories of something pure and sublime. We all enter a poem knowing its hunger and emerge stripped naked of our emotions. There's always a death standing at the end of the sentence. Not every enjambment gives meaning. Some lines are meant to be left orphaned, like the day they found an old crumpled picture of my bombed city in my wallet. We all enter a poem knowing its hunger, like a night feverishly trying to find its salvation in the open mouth of the bloody dawn. And this one, I think most of our people in the eastern part of the United States can relate to. This is called The Beautiful Death Around Us. And it's based on the invasive species, the lanternfly, which emerged in the summer of 2022 in the eastern part of the United States. And you know how we were being like, if you see it, you kill it.
Kill it.
And and because of that, the dilemma, the moral dilemma of killing something, I wrote this poem. The Beautiful Death Around Us. I have been taught by my granny to always help an animal in need, even an insect. A monarch with broken wings fluttering in the shining mud, shining bravely in the precipice of the city, stopping us in our tracks. I hold it gently in the center of my tender palms like an infant, cuddling its existence with all my warmth and tend to its broken wings till it can fly. One day, a small-breasted warbler crashed against the blinding windows of my high-rise and fell on the balcony. Death is a shining thing. It draws you in like a Pied Piper, a shining penny half covered in a roll of hay. I tend to its broken wings and wait feverishly for it to open its eyes. Numerous tales of kindness and humility come back to me, rushing when sometimes kindness becomes a stranger to me. These days are strange, the year is strange. Death and dying have been given a new name. The normal has been anointed again. And yet again, there is an invasive species as beautiful as dream in the thicket of the night with its spotted wings and a fiery abdomen, a spotted lanternfly. And the message that it brings for us is, when you see it, kill it. What a terrible act of survival. It's either them or us. The existence is beautiful and yet so devastating. Sometimes I feel How much kindness is left inside this withering soul of mine that can kill a living being with all its might. So the next one, I wrote it full of rage, and it's in honor of Women's History Month, and it's based on the complete abortion plan, which we mentioned in the Project 2025 manifesto. And it's called They Have Plans for Us. Oh yes, they have plans for us. Oh yes, the one that they have hammered down to the last line, the manifesto, word after word, line after line, pages after pages, mapping the curves of our bodies, silhouettes of our desires, dipped in their thick black inks of subjugation. Yes, they have plans for us, boxing all the mortal things bejeweled with life plans, trinkets and bling, underlining their adoration for us, their unfettered love, passion, their soft caring being. Yes, they have plans for us, stripping bare our tongues with hands tied at our backs, wounds scraped clean, as pristine and demure as they want us to be, with their stories of success etched in our spines for kingdoms to come. Yes, they have plans for us, to carry the love of incest and rape in our womb, licking our wounds clean but never saying a word, bringing shunned love to our full breast, letting it down a bit, warmly and gently nursing it every day, recounting the days like a horror story on reels. Yes, they have plans for us, till our thick blood trickles down the murky lanes of a dark, empty parking lot for their sheer pleasure, a sluice of broken dreams and desires carrying our strangled future. Yes, they have plans for us, for guarding every inch, every iota of our existence, having a lien to our soul, a perfect story of a mother with a rounded belly, making it complete, making it whole. Yes, they have plans for us to get on our knees to say our prayer for exalted gods in heaven, to utter words of salvation and redemption. Yes, they have plans for us to carry the blood stories in our sacred womb and not to utter a single word, to hold the bitter truth on the edge of our teeth while licking razor blades without spilling a word. Yes, they have plans for us, freeing us from all this self-destruction our simple minds can't conceive, taking us to yet another hell that they have brilliantly mapped for us. The next is a short poem, and it's called A Bridge Needs to Be Built. Not every thought stirs me up. Not every flicker brightens my heart. It takes 1,000 steps in my heart to take one little step towards you. Not every morning brightens my soul. Not every rain washes my sins. I have knelt on so many pews seeking absolution. Not every prayer absolves my sins. Not every scar sings songs of my glory. Not every wrinkle is chiseled with experience. I'm a fleck of mortality riding the winds of time. Not every moment of history carves me. Not every sin I commit defines me. Not every blank space in my heart can be filled. Not every thought of mine can be aligned. But every day in me, I find myself a bridge that needs to be built, a dark corner that needs to be lit. And the next one is called Deciphering the Madness, and this was commissioned for the National Poetry Month, and it was aired on WNYC Studio. Deciphering the Madness. And it was written during the pandemic. I ask the night feverishly as it rests on the caligenous back of time, like a thick rope going through the wide open mouth of a blind wall, rubbing against it, leaving marks on its existence, like a divine mark on the forehead after kneeling before the gods for countless times. I ask myself, is it ever going to be all right again? Thinking, as I take a second glance at the empty streets of my house, longing for the clickety-clack of the footsteps warming its thick cobble skin. There's a method to this madness that I used to discover Every morning, looking outside my window, counting the hurried whispers of the crowds as they move towards the station like a mass exodus. Now I long for those sights that I normally abhor, the state of normalcy of what it was before, as the light sheepishly makes its way through thin wooden slats of my bedroom window. Is it ever going to be all right again? The pinging sound of the garbage truck backing up in an alley, soft paws scratching as they dig dirt in the almost bald spot of the park, joggers cladded in sweaty bodies, heaving to taking another sliver of breath. Is it ever going to be all right again? I look at the puny finches weaving a nest in the oak outside my apartment as they decipher this raining madness, carefree, weaving home for their future self. I say to myself, it is indeed going to be all right again. The next one is called Lullaby, an Elixir, a Tourniquet, a Panacea, and it was the winner of the state level contest, and the theme was, what would a poet do when the whole world is screaming? So, Lullaby, an Elixir, a Tourniquet, a Panacea. And while the world is ablaze with hurt, hunger, and greed, birthing orphans by the second with street laced with death and dying, wailing widows running stark naked on streets, their bodies splayed open, eyes gazing from emptiness to nothing, facing the nakedness of this world. Children with ashen dreams lining their eyes, once filled with hope, holding the last remnant, the last definition of their home. And with heartbeats syncopating with deafening explosions, line of terror anointing the morning sky, once filled with blue kindness, and now a graveyard of unclaimed dreams, with the names of those you do not know, with a face you don't bother to recall. And with my shattered heart in this broken world, sitting on a pile of explosives, crimson hope birthing in my heaving bosom, tears marking their territory, I tried feverishly to write a lullaby, a poem, an elixir, a tourniquet, a panacea, few words of solace, a morsel of hope, a plinth for their empty existence, earth for their hunger to satiate their parched being, to fill the soft folds of their ears with the melody of a lost lullaby unfazed by an exploding bomb, to give them one night without nightmares, a night without the blood of their loved ones slowly seeping into the courtyard, marking violence in its wake, to put a stop to their despondent lives being turned into endless reels for all the hungry eyes of this ravenous world to feed, to put a stop once, just once. And I have two more poems. This one is called Trails of Kindness, and it was a part of public exhibit in Jersey City, and it was published in Pen Women magazine. And it teaches about, how kindness is the necessity of being a human being. I count the years as I walk past the trees lining my courtyard, counting them one by one neatly on my soft, supple fingers. The mighty oak has weathered worse, and still nests sparrows. The jasmine tree, whose flower-laden shoots smiles through their fragrant arms, waved me goodbyes, their warm presence deeply carried by the northern winds. Even with the slight opening in my kitchen window, they can make their presence felt. What more is to this life than to count joys and blessings in the crawling lines of my mint plant that is growing and spilling joys in all directions? The new tender leaves of basil, twinkling and shining through the sliver of the sunlight. Warm, supple hands of my succulents, holding water as kindness in their thick leaves, remind me of the frail hands of my granny combing my hair and making trails of kindness, reminding me always that kindness is a necessary gesture of acceptance, like the puny sapling breaking through the crumbling earth, as it finds hope and grows through pain. And then a close, thank you so much. I'm going to close my reading with the poem Brotherhood, and it starts with an epigraph by Martin Luther King Jr. We must live together as brothers or perish together as fools. Brotherhood. We are all broken, crumbled, rounded again, made from the same clay, caked and baked in the same unforgiving oven. We all have cracks in us, from where the lights gets in. Frayed at the border, pulling apart at the seams, peeling off and breaking down into pieces in all our miseries. We're all the same, living under the same ashen, cloudless sky and blue moon in its reverie. Breathing the same air, swooning over the same melody of the souls, crooning our necks to the same unbroken chords, in unison we roll. We are all the same, laughing and cracking up with welled-up eyes and bruises we endure. Getting stabbed by the same knife, bloodied by the same bullet, caste, creed, or religion doesn't seem to discriminate or beg to differ. We are all the same heartbeat, sliced and splintered into a million pieces, and the same God we worship, holding books with different verses. We are all the same from within, laughing at our scars with abject profundity. We are brothers and sisters, together we shall live. Thank you so much, everyone.
How are you going to do this? 'Cause-
I'm going to follow your instructions.
I'm going to put 3 chairs here.
Yeah, I think we could just turn Indron around.
Okay.
So easy.
We're going to get a couple of chairs here.
I think we'll move Indron back a little bit. Give me that.
I have to take care of something. Oh, and Tim, can you fix the camera? Do you need this chair? No, not at all.
Just gonna have the poets come on up here and do a little Q&A. Perfect. Okay. So we love to have the audience contribute as much as they're moved to with questions. I know Stephen will probably have a couple because grades aren't in yet at NYU.
Come on, Stephen. Where's first question?
But I'll wait for Deedle to get back. Yeah, please. And if you need to get something to drink, go ahead.
Steve, you have your questions ready?
Dino! Please. Thank you guys so much for a wonderful reading.
Thank you so much.
Wide variety and great warmth, great soul, great lyricism. I'll ask the first question, something that was occurring to me while you were reading. Actually, so many things. So maybe I'll ask another after this one. But I wonder if each of you can talk about a little bit about how the place where you grew up informs where your work is now.
Okay. So, yeah, I was born and brought up in my father used to get transferred a lot because the nature of his job. So imagine me like from kindergarten to 12, I changed 9 schools.
Oh, wow. Oh,
That was the amount of traveling I had. So I had exposure to a lot of different culture, languages, cuisine, and everything. And I think but the thing which informs my poems and poetry is basically, I write mostly about the social issues and all the issues which is related to, the humankind, as in like sexual and gender-based discrimination, violence against women, reproductive rights violations and all that. And right, and when I was growing up in India, I was like, it was not like everything was happening to me, but I was, I was looking at them from a different perspective. And then when I got married and when I moved to United States, I realized that the same issues exist here. And the thing which remains, it's the body. It always remains, at threat. Whether you are in India, it's the same thing, and whether you are here in United States. So that's why I realized that, the borders are fictitious. If there's a threat to body, it's a threat to body around the world. If there's a threat to humankind, if there are reproductive or human rights violation, or people getting affected by the toxic political culture of the country, it's happening to so many of us. And the migrant crisis and everything, it's not one place on earth. And that's why my poetry kinds of trying to bring that awareness of the issues. And I also want to bring a point that, how you have to have empathy for your fellow being. And poetry is a great tool for advocacy because it stimulates empathy. And empathy is necessary to achieve social justice. So that's why I chose the medium, and that's why my poems are so much informed by it. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
I'll go quickly, in that it's probably the exact opposite. I grew up in a very small town in rural Connecticut, not the Gold Coast, Connecticut. I'm talking more cows than people, Connecticut. My father was the minister of the only church in town, and we were looked on as exemplars of behavior and religious thought and all sorts of things in this town of 1,000 people. So I don't know that I was exposed to anything of culture or different cuisines or other types of people or other economic strata or really anything except from the library. So lots of lovely people and also lots of thinking that is difficult for me to abide. So we've lived in Brooklyn for 28 years.
Whoa.
Brooklyn.
I too lived in Brooklyn actually.
Yeah.
And I published with a Brooklyn press called the Hanging Loose Press. They published my first book. They published my most recent book. They published 4 books in there. So it's local in that sense for me. But I was born in Ceylon, a country that no longer exists, I often say.
Sri
It's been
Lanka.
renamed Sri Lanka. And the name Sri Lanka for me is a politicized name. It's an ugly name. It's not. So I'm being unpatriotic by saying I prefer Ceylon, but I do. And I wrote a book once called Ceylon R.I.P. So rest in peace, Ceylon. And in Ceylon you found and find today elephants, lots of elephants, many less than they used to be when I was a child. And so the elephants live in families and they're very loving with each other and they take care of their dead. They're vigilant of the dead. These elephant graveyards. And so the elephants are asking me a question when I came to New York. Why did you leave? And so to answer that question, I started writing. Continuing to write my poetry, trying to answer that question. Why did you leave? And then it's very religious for me in the sense of my formation in a Catholic family and certain images of Cain and Abel. The murder of Abel has bothered me ever since I was a kid, and it still bothers me today. It seems to be the original sin that symbolically I carry on my forehead, So trying to understand why I killed my brother and how can I atone for that murder as one part of this exploration. And then just the notion that there was a paradise that needs to be regained somehow. And it's nice to think that your childhood was a paradise. It was a dice, when they say about Sri Lanka, a visitor in the 18th century, a clergyman said, we're only, said this beautiful, beautiful island where only man is vile. So the notion that the only vile, the evil is a human being. And we are vile to each other, in so many ways we're destroying our ecosystem. So what can poetry do? It does make something happen. It does heal and releases endorphins. And I think you can end up writing things like Resist and think that at least makes, I think you feel better and the reader feel better and renewed somehow. But I don't know what it would be like if somebody tortured me, for example, or somebody took me and as they did with a recent visitor to the US, kept him naked on the floor in a nice detention room and ended up being hospitalized. How would the body react? There was a poet in Sri Lanka who was jailed and he was tortured in jail with rats. You can imagine what. So people go through a lot of suffering. I've been very lucky. As you say in Spanish, salido ileso. I've got away. So that's part of the sense of guilt that I carry. Why me? When 25 members of the other family were killed in the tsunami, in my own particular family, we got away without any major losses. There were some people who were disappeared for a few days, but they were found. So, things like that. So these are sort of questions. So yeah, I do ask lots of questions. The Book of Questions, one of my favorite books by Pablo Neruda, one of his last books. So, El Libro de Preguntas. So if you can ask the question, I think you've gone quite a bit of the way towards Ithaca or something. So I'll stop there. Thank you for the question.
Thank you. Yeah, really. Others?
Maybe I have like a small question. I really love the last part, like about the basically you're using a repeatable sentence. Like yes I was planning, or yes they was planning, and then also you are using the way you're using a repeatable sentence to address the emotional feelings of how our perspective about the bodies and how do we treat our bodies, and I really appreciate that. But I'm not sure that my understanding is correct in terms of it's a way to address the emotional feelings. And is there any other ways that we can approach to your point in some senses? Thanks.
So the repetition of lines which I've been doing, it's a kind of poetic device. It's called anaphora, right? Where we anaphora, right? So where we repeat the lines, like there's a repetition, right? Every time, so that's one of the forms of writing the poems, right? They're like structured forms, they're non-structured and free verse, and there's the various ways of writing a poem. But to me, why I write a lot in that style, because because it's like resounding, right? So I want to stress importance to that particular, the heartbeat of the poem, or you can say the underlying emotion of the poem. So I want to stress it by saying it again and again, and that's the one poetic device which kind of resonates with my writing style. So there's so many other writing styles that I write in, and I've written structured forms also, but it depends, and sometimes you can't decide the form of a poem. As they say, the poem comes to you and you don't decide until and unless, if you decide too much early in the process, you're basically screwed. You can't write because you're too much worried about how the poem is going to take shape. So to me, it's always like, let the poem come, and then when it comes with its own identity, and want to preserve that. And if the other question, if I'm getting it right, and correct me if I'm wrong, is the body thing is like everybody, we have our own bodies, and in this toxic political environment where we are the body always remains a threat, and when the first time when I wrote, my body is not an apology, to be very honest, I wrote from a woman's perspective, but when I started reading out, in events, there were, you know, queer people, there were men coming up to me, there were people, everybody of like, you know, other than women, they were coming up to me and say that, you know, this talks to me a lot because, you know, men also go through saying there are certain cookie cutter rules, you have to look like this, you should not be bald, you should not look like this, and they have to apologize for their appearance. And same as, you know, the queer community, LGBTQ community, and even the women. So everybody, it includes everyone, it compasses everyone, all of us. So that's how the poem came along, and that again poem was like, I wrote poems in a rage. So sometimes when I have to like state poems, like state the point, I use the anaphora.
Yeah,
So
I really love the answer, like to broaden my horizon in terms of like the apologies. The apologization doesn't only determine female but also male.
yeah,
Thank you.
thank you so much.
Did you have a question?
I didn't. I'm enjoying this.
Right.
Yeah. So I'm just wondering in terms of how the poem looks on the page. So actually, Joanna, you showed how. Oh, look, these are couplets. For each of you, when you sit down to write a poem, how does that come about? And the look of it. How do you decide, I'm going to write it in couplets or tercets or quatrains or maybe just a prose poem? How do you come to that decision? Maybe explain the process a bit for each of you.
I can every poem is different for me, and then each poem has develops its own form in the process of writing the poem, you know. And that form can be something visual, you know, that falls into quatrains or tercets, as you said, or there's an obvious apparent pattern. I write a lot of sonnets, but I call them free sonnets. You see, I like to break the form. I respect aspects of the form, the 14 lines, the volta, you know, the turn in the 8th line. I respect certain rhyme schemes, but I don't respect them well enough to want to stick So I'm a faithless sonnet writer, you know. I don't follow Shakespeare or Milton or Spencer, but I know more or less how they write sonnets formally. And that's part of the fact that I come out of a free verse tradition. Free verse, of course, is a form. I've been writing in free verse all my life, and so it's. But I'm moving towards forms from free verse, but then I want to keep this sort of idea, play joke with myself that I'm writing something that caged and free at the same time. So the sonnet is a form that I often go to, but I have written villanelles and I have written a few other forms, haikus very rarely, but yes. And so I appreciate the challenge of making the words fit the meter, or making the meter bring the words out in all their glory. You know, somehow when you have them a certain pattern, it does imbue the words. If you read "Do Not Go Gentle Into That Good Night," right? And Thomas, old age should burn and rave at close, etc. The repetitions there are just incredibly moving and powerful. And so yeah, I mean, it's words and music, right? Poetry is word music. So it's a kind of music even in free verse and so I move away from poems that are in prose, let's say, or poems that are very difficult rhetorically to understand. I'm very anti-rhetoric, anti-language for the sake of language. Anti in Spanish, neo-Baroque poetry, which is a kind of Baroque poetry, newly done. Though I have friends who practice this poetry, so we argue about it all the time over coffee or something. So yeah, you always try to improve as a poet technically, and as Derek Walton used to say to his students, you know, "Donde está la música? Where is the music?" When he would review some of these poems, where is the music? So for me, the music is important, much more important than the word than anything else. I if you had to take one thing, away. So I'll stop there. Thank you.
Okay, I do believe that there's an architecture to feelings, and if I sit long enough with a poem, that architecture will come to me usually after the fact. Sometimes I just write it all out in one blob. I mean, just very practically speaking, I write by hand, it comes out in a blob, and then I kind of slot the architecture into place. I do write a lot of poems in couplet form, specifically as a faithless nod to the ghazal, which is a Persian form. I've spoken about it many times. I'm sure many of you know what it is, but the most common definition is that the couplets are like pearls on a strand, so they're distinct, but linked in a way, and the idea is that you can take one out and it should, or it could stand on its own. And specifically what is so important to me about that particular form is that it really encourages leaps between couplets. You don't have to hold the hand of the reader, you don't have to. And I was finding that as an educator and as a female, particularly as a female who's not unintelligent, I found that my linguistic tendency was to sort of gently carry people through my ideas or my argument, and to have introductory adverbial clauses. After I read this book, I was and it really bothered me once I noticed it, because I decided one day to write down the type of grammatical sentence that a bunch of my poems, at every single line I would write, it's a complex common, it's a declarative, and I went through and realized I have a lot of these sentences that just kind of gently bring the reader to the idea. And why do I do that? It's because it's difficult and I'm only speaking for myself, it's difficult for this particular competent female to come across as weird or too insightful or arcane or something. And I got so sick of that tick that I was doing that I was like, I'm just gonna write an isolated couplet. And for me it was kind of a feminist thing. I do write prose poems. I do like structure, but again, sometimes it's fun to kind of, be like, entropy, you're in a quatrain now, So I do quite like various forms and like playing with them, and I also like the concept of play when you revise, because I think play, when you revise, is important to counteract sort of the CEO of the brain that wants to make everything neat and clear.
Yeah, I should say ditto and be done, but because I agree with so much of it, what you guys have said. And for me, the poetry, because it's not, I have not done MFA or BA and all that, so I've not been trained in the various forms of the poetry. So I, say, I was trained on the job, as they say, so I started with the free verse, and the more and more I started educating myself about various forms of the poetry, the structured forms, the villanelle, sonnets, and everything. So I started writing and trying those forms. But, and I wrote like haikus, haibans and everything and all. But then I realized that, I can't decide what form the poem is. The poem decides on itself. And for me, there are two kinds of poems. There's some poems which are meant for the paper. As in, there are shape poems, there are contrapuntal poems, where the two poems are, you can either read them left to right, or there are two poems merged together. So that is something for visual thing, right? If you see how the two poems are merged together. And then there are shape poems, they're like eraser poems. So these are poems which are meant for paper. And then there are spoken word poems, and there are poems which you decide the line break based on the breath. So if I'm thinking of writing some poems which I have to speak out loud, so I have to make sure where my breath is like breaking, and then I give the line breaks according to them, where I have to, put a pause to it, where I have to. So as I say that, the shaping of the poems comes at the very end of it. I don't start with deciding about whether it will be a structured or, unstructured or a free verse poem. I just write the poem and then it kinds of, I don't know, it just birds on it itself. It's a very beautiful process. Sometimes they are like poems which are later and I come back to them, I convert them into, couplets. Sometimes I take couplets and convert them into prose poems. So and I love doing that, and the way of writing poems for me, it's very catharsis for me, because I write about issues and all that, and if it stays up in here, I just go absolute batshit crazy. So it has to be on a paper. So I write about it, and it's like, okay, I have done something about it. And I can share it so many people, and it'll generate some level of awareness. And that's how I became an editor first, and then the author, because because I wanted to write for the anthologies and to generate the revenues by giving poems to the social awareness based anthologies, and that's how I was trying to support their causes. And then after writing for almost 500 of my words got published, and I was invited to be a reader. And then in the city, and then there was a festival, and they said, bring all your books. I was like, I don't have any books. So they said, what do? You have so many published poems. I'm like, because that was not my intention. My intention was always about, how poetry can be used as a social, as a advocacy and social justice, educating myself and educating other people, and, being a voice for the unspoken and unheard, because I hold a certain level of privilege. So I can speak for other people if they can't speak for themselves. So that's why I also write poems, and I read most of the poems which relate to the public, and there are certain poems which are meant for paper, as if you see them, you can say, oh, these are poems which are meant for paper. So that's, as I said, I don't decide the form comes up to me. But initially, sometimes when I learn a new form, if I learn how to write a villanelle, or Petrarchan sonnet, or a Shakespearean sonnet, I obviously there are rules to it and everything, and then I start writing something depending on it, because you have to have that, the rhyming sequence and everything, and it's volta. You have to have a little bit of awareness, and that's why most of my poetry, it comes out of my feeling. So if I have to write a very structured poem, I have to be very aware of that. And honestly speaking, I don't like it, but just to educate myself and to learn more about the forms, because there are so many 35 poetic forms. I love to challenge myself, so I keep on trying to learn more and more. I don't know whether it answers the question, but that's what that's what it is.
Thank you all. I think it's a good time to.
I actually do have a question.
Oh, please. And this will be the last one, and then we'll join the poets in the book sale room.
All right, I'll make it as short as possible. I was sitting here thinking about the fact that, as a young woman, I was always intending to be a writer. And I thought I would write novels. And then I had a family, and I got busy, and I have some witnesses here to that. And it got backburnered. I never got to it. And now, as I've gotten older, I'm now an empty nester, and I'm revisiting the idea of trying to write. But I think that, similar to how I like to read, because I'm in a book club, so I am reading novels, but I find that I love the short form of writing much better. Short stories, and perhaps poetry. I don't know. I never thought about poetry for myself. But how did you all arrive at being poets? If I can ask, it's a little bit of a. I said it was short, but I know it's a heavy question. And did you start somewhere else and then arrive at being poets?
Because retail sucked.
Okay. There you go.
Yeah, 2 words answer. That's a challenge.
Well, I can say that a few words. My father was a poet, and when I started writing poetry, it wasn't rejected at home because he was a poet, and so my mother and father did not say no, even though they would have preferred me to be a doctor or a lawyer or an accountant. When I started becoming a poet, it was sort of a family secret. I mean, his father was writing poetry, I couldn't reject his choice. And then they encouraged it. My father encouraged it. I wrote poems and he would show it to him and he encouraged me. And then he introduced me to his friends, the poets. And that's how I eventually met a very famous poet in Ginsberg when I was about 17. He was a friend of my dad's. And so each meeting meant a deepening awareness of the world of the poet. Not only the writing, but what comes with the office, you know, with the readings and the immersion in a tradition and traditions of reading. So poets would tell me what they read and what I should read. So like Allen Ginsberg told me to go when we go to New York, walk across the Brooklyn Bridge, and then go to a bookshop and get Mark Twain's poem The Bridge, and then read it. So I did that. I mean, this guide like that. When you go to Charlottesville, and I was once talking to him from Brussels, and he said, go to Charlottesville and visit Rimbaud's poems. So you just follow the guidance of the people who've come before you, and so it's all a very organic sort of process, as well as encouraging process, because nobody said stop writing, or nobody said. I mean, there was only one person tried to stop me from writing, and that was in Spanish when I started writing Spanish, and he was upset, I think, that I was writing in Spanish. He said, why don't you just say it in English? What's your language? And I couldn't stand that response. So yeah, anyway, I'll stop there.
So for me, I think I started writing like 7 years back in poetry, because before that, while growing up, it was like, first you study, then you do work, then you get married and everything is like so well planned for you by others that you don't get the time for it, and you've been just doing one thing after the other. And after I got married and shifted my base and everything, and because in India I suffered a lot at my personal level because of the nature of my work. I used to travel a lot for my work, and unfortunately I couldn't see my father in his last time, and he was cremated before I could reach home because I was in London and I couldn't reach on time. So, and there were certain other things, so it kind of like it stayed with me, that because of this work and all. And when I came here, it was the same level of profile they were giving me, and then I became a mom, and I was like, I cannot do the same thing, what if. So it kind of, this is the natural kind of, the thing which happened, that I started doing more community work. I started doing, consulting instead of going for a full-on job as a project manager or a product manager, because I did that for 15 years, and I was like, I can't do that. So then I think, when you sit down, as we all realized during pandemic, where there's so much of the white noise was like gone, and then there were people who were creating like anything. Right? They were like so creative, they were so expressive. So I think that when all that noise got down in my life, and then when I had the right, time to myself, I started writing. And in my family, music was always a part of our life while growing up. There were always, till this day, there's always something playing, So I was very moved by the musicality of the thing, and in different genres of writing, fiction, non-fiction, poetry, is the closest when it comes to rhythms and musicality. I think that's my natural inclination towards poetry, and the content is, as I told you, it's informed by the social. So that's how I started writing. So I always tell this joke, like when my VPs and all, they meet me now, and they're like, we have never seen you writing. I'm like, yeah, you suck the life out of me. I used to write technical specs. What do you think I'm going to write? So I know, and then when I saw that I can make a difference with this, I completely pivoted from my life as in the information technology field for my life as a editor, blogger, and a literary activist. So that's how poetry gave me catharsis, because initially when I used to write, believe it or not, it was stream of conscious. I used to write 10 poems in a day. It was so freaking good time because it was like so much of it. But now it comes down to like how much time you have and how much things move you. Because I'll give you a very small example. It's like when you read something which has happened in the world in a newspaper, you might forget it, or any media, any form of media. But if the same thing is said in a form of poetry, it will move you and it will stay with you. So I think that resonated with me, and that's how I chose this poem. So yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for the question. And thank you everyone for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you guys so much. It was a wonderful reading. We have books inside from these poets. Please take a look at them and have a chat. Do the right thing.
Yeah, please buy the book. Yes.